Have you ever played a video game and thought, wow, this game is a lot of fun, before going on the internet and finding out that the game you like is not fun, it's actually the worst thing to ever exist, and the developers who worked hard to make it belong in prison? I feel like this is something that every gamer has experienced at least once. Oh, you're a fan of this game? Well then you're not a serious gamer, and you also shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. Despite the internet being a useful tool in a lot of ways, it not only enables people to act like this, it flat out encourages that kind of behavior. However, I'm not here to start a discussion on how rage bait and engagement farming have ruined online discourse. I'm here to talk about one of my favorite games from the 8th generation of gaming, Rage 2. Developed by the geniuses at id Software, along with Avalanche Studios, creators of the Just Cause franchise, as well as the 2015 Mad Max game, Rage 2 was released in 2019 to mixed reviews and the disappointing sales. Now, speaking as a person who adores Rage 1, along with pretty much all of id Software's games, the fact that Rage 2 didn't perform very well makes me extremely upset. This game is absolutely awesome, and I think you should play it if you like FPS games. The game certainly has its shortcomings, just like every other game to exist, but it makes up for them by being a total blast to play. Before I get into the game itself though, I wanted to talk about the graphics and optimization really quick. Powered by Avalanche Studios' Apex engine, Rage 2's world is very pretty, but the game doesn't just look good, it also runs surprisingly well. Throughout the entirety of my playthroughs, I maintained a consistent 60 FPS. It never stuttered, it never hitched, it did crash twice, but speaking as a New Vegas lover, a game crashing only 2 times across multiple playthroughs is a miracle. Regarding bugs and glitches, it's really weird. In my first 3 playthroughs, I never experienced any noteworthy bugs. However, starting with my 4th playthrough, I began recording my gameplay with OBS Studio, which is normally a fantastic piece of recording software. But from the moment my 4th playthrough started, I experienced countless weird things. Strange graphical glitches, getting thrown out of the world boundary, my HUD disappearing, audio cutting out then randomly cutting back in, just all kinds of weird shit, and it was persistent the entire time. This playthrough was also when my game crashed on me, but thankfully I never lost any progress due to how the autosaving works. I have absolutely no idea if OBS caused these issues, or if I was just lucky to not experience any bugs on my first few playthroughs, but it's something you should keep in mind. Back to Rage 2's graphics though, there's a lot of location variety in this game, and the Wasteland's 6 regions look so good that it might take you about an hour before you realize that none of the locations you visit and none of the characters you meet actually have any interesting stories to tell. Yeah, I'll be the first person to admit it, the story in Rage 2 stinks. It's not like Titanfall 2, where the story is solid, but I just personally don't like what happens. The story in Rage 2 is legitimately bad. It's one of those games where the plot feels like it only exists to be a vehicle for the gameplay, and that would be fine if we had some good characters to care about. But we don't. You won't be getting attached to any of the people you meet in the Wasteland, and while the voice acting is serviceable, nobody has anything interesting to say. I'm surprised that the F key on my keyboard didn't get worn away due to how many times I pressed it in order to skip dialogue and cutscenes. Overall, the story just feels like a bunch of who gives a shit. And if you're looking for an FPS game that tells a compelling story, you won't find that here. Despite that, Rage 2 makes up for this with its fantastic gameplay, which I'm just itching to get into. Rage 2's gameplay is absolutely exhilarating. After a fairly standard prologue that teaches you the basics, you're thrusted into the open world, and what you do next is up to you. You'll spend the majority of your time in combat against mutants, various bandit clans, and also the Authority, who are the game's main antagonists. Movement and gunplay are both extremely well done. Literally everything you do feels fluid and responsive. Using firearms, nanotrite abilities, and gadgets to kill assholes never gets old. The combat is often compared favorably to Doom 2016's, and while I understand that comparison, Doom is not the game that I immediately think of whenever I reflect on Rage 2. The main type of enemies you fight are gun-wielding humans, and the enemy AI isn't very smart, so the game will compensate for this by throwing a lot of them at you at once. This, combined with the open world setting, high amount of jank, bullet sponge enemies, and heavy emphasis on loot and crafting, has always reminded me of Fallout 4 more than any other game. And I am a really big fan of Fallout 4, so it makes sense why I love this game as well. Some people also like to assume that Rage 2 is a knockoff of Borderlands, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Rage 2 is actually good. The aforementioned nanotrite abilities are a big aspect of Rage 2, and they heavily contribute to the game's fun factor. They're not just static abilities either, each one of them can be upgraded in various different ways. You'll obtain your first ability, Overdrive, in the game's prologue, and it's fucking awesome. Activating Overdrive causes your capabilities to become amplified. You regenerate health faster and deal more damage, but most importantly, it also transforms your weapons into absolute powerhouses. Give each of your weapons a try while Overdrive is active, and I will be there to pick your jaw up off the floor after you do so. I will say though, the developers missed a huge opportunity to call this ability Rage, and have you rage all over the place. I am so sorry. I know I'm cringe. The second ability you unlock in the game is Dash, which works exactly how it does in Doom Eternal. Dashing is extremely important, and it's honestly a stretch to label this as an ability due to how often you'll be using it. I highly recommend upgrading your dash as fast as you can. An ability that you will most likely unlock early on is Shatter, which is my favorite. It allows you to warp to a nearby enemy and blow them away, weakening them, if not outright killing them. Shatter is extremely practical, and just like the dash, you'll want to upgrade it quickly. After just a few upgrades, you will have an extremely powerful ability with tremendous range, a ridiculously short cooldown, and a shockwave effect that deals collateral damage. Using Shatter to blow assholes away just never gets old. Beyond the three of these though, we also have a slew of other extremely useful abilities. There's Grav Jump, which allows you to double jump, Slam, which is basically the gravity slam from Black Ops 4, Vortex, a power that deploys a black hole, pulling in nearby enemies, and finally, Rush, which gives you super speed for a short period and can be upgraded to turn you invisible. All of these abilities are extremely useful and a lot of fun to use, but do you know what's neither of those things? Barrier. In all 4 of my playthroughs of Rage 2, I have just never seen a use for Barrier. In a game like this, I am not going to be spending time hiding behind cover like I'm a squishy milsim character. Please do not waste resources upgrading Barrier, it's not worth it. Besides Barrier, all of the abilities in this game are awesome, and you won't regret spending the resources necessary to upgrade them. Focus on Shatter and Dash first though, trust me. Although your nanotrite abilities are great, your guns are even better. I would actually say that Rage 2's guns are the best part about the entire game. And they're not just great, they are fucking magnificent. There are 8 usable weapons in the base game, with the deluxe edition adding the BFG from Doom, bringing the total number to 9. I honestly feel like this is a perfect number. You don't have so many guns that it's hard to choose what to even use, but you have enough to create a feeling of variety and versatility. You have your standard FPS guns, like a pistol, an assault rifle, and a rocket launcher, but there are also some really interesting ones that have their own gimmicks. Since the weapons are definitely the highlight of this game, I thought it would be fun to do a little ranking of them from worst to best. Here we go. You have this weapon right out of the gate, and it's indisputably the worst one in the entire game. Despite that, the Sidewinder pistol still has its uses. It works as a last resort kind of gun when you're out of ammo for your other weapons. However, at no point was I ever hurting for ammo in any of my playthroughs. Ammo is so common that I'm convinced whenever it rains in the wasteland, bullets fall from the sky instead of precipitation. So yeah, it's not completely useless, but you won't be using the Sidewinder very much in this game. It does get better with upgrades, much better actually, but you would be better off upgrading literally any other weapon. Interestingly, when you activate Overdrive, the Sidewinder goes from being an underwhelming, dinky little thing to an absolute powerhouse that feels amazing to use. Trust me, you should try this gun out with Overdrive at least once. It absolutely rocks. Although it's one of the worst weapons from a practical perspective, the Grav Dart Launcher is insanely fun to use. It rapidly fires darts at enemies that allow you to fling them into walls, off cliffs, or just way up into the air, letting gravity do the work for you. The Grav Dart Launcher rewards creativity more than any other gun in the game. Killing bad guys with this thing just never gets old, and for that reason alone, it's much better than the Sidewinder pistol. This weapon takes some getting used to, but when it works extremely well. My personal favorite weapon in the game, and one of my favorite video game guns. The Firestorm Revolver fires incendiary bullets that allow you to light shot enemies ablaze by snapping your fingers. Seeing this happen in real time is an absolute spectacle. It's not very powerful, but god damn is it satisfying. I always go for this weapon early on, and it's usually the first one I fully upgrade. I seriously adore this thing. However, I can be objective and admit that most of the other guns in the game are straight up better than the Firestorm. Overall, it's a surprisingly practical weapon, and it is extremely fun to use on top of that. It's one of the more difficult weapons to obtain, but acquiring the charged pulse cannon is well worth the effort. This bulky weapon fires devastating energy pods at a steady rate, and it absolutely shreds bosses. It also looks and sounds awesome. Instead of ever needing to be reloaded, the charged pulse cannon will simply overheat when it's used too much, but the closer the gun is to overheating, the more damage it will deal. As a result, you're going to be playing back and forth with this thing whenever you use it, which can be a hassle when in a life and death situation. It also takes a while to equip, which is kind of annoying. So the charged pulse cannon is really fun to use, and it's extremely powerful, but I just can't place it any higher due to how inconvenient it is to handle. Given how it's the legendary weapon from Doom, you might be surprised to see the BFG in the middle of the list. While this iconic weapon is ridiculously strong, ammo for it cannot be found in the Wasteland. You have to hit up a store in one of the game's towns to reload it, and ammo for this thing is expensive. It's also slow, clunky, and it takes forever to equip and fire. Above all else though, there aren't any Arch Vials in Rage 2, so I don't ever feel the need to really bring out the BFG. It's just not a very useful weapon. At no point am I ever like, oh shit, time to pull out the BFG. It's also only obtainable if you have the deluxe edition of Rage 2, so depending on which version of the game you have, you might not even be able to get it in the first place. Despite all of its flaws, the raw strength and iconic status of the BFG make me rate it this high. I would feel like an idiot if it was placed any lower on this list. The Hyper Cannon is in all likelihood the last weapon you will unlock, so of course it's going to pack a punch. It's a railgun. That's pretty much all you need to know. Ammo for it is surprisingly common, so when you do get it, you will be using it a lot. I also just love that reload animation. Overall, the Hyper Cannon is a great weapon, and I always get a kick out of using it. The biggest thing this weapon has going against it is how late you'll obtain it in the game. I personally didn't want to rate the Smart Rocket Launcher this high, but from an objective standpoint, it's one of the most useful weapons in the entire game. To be completely honest, unless you're playing on Nightmare, you can complete Rage 2 with just the top 3 weapons on this list. When fired from the hip, the Smart Rocket Launcher fires standard rockets, but aiming down the sight allows you to lock onto enemies and fire multiple small rockets at them instead of a single big one. Sounds awesome, right? I barely use it. I'm always on the move when I'm in combat, so stopping to lock onto an enemy that I'm going to eviscerate anyway just feels pointless. Maybe you'll get more use out of it than me though. Regardless, this weapon is still very, very useful, hence its high ranking. Obtained during the prologue alongside the Sidewinder pistol, the Ranger Assault Rifle is easily the better weapon of the two. I don't really have too much to say about it. It's an assault rifle. You already know that it's a bread and butter weapon that's useful in basically every combat scenario. From the beginning of the game all the way to the very end, this is a gun that you will be regularly dishing out damage with. It's accurate, decently powerful, ammo is everywhere, and most importantly, it feels good to use. Though it's not as interesting or creative as the other guns, the Ranger Assault Rifle still rocks. It earns its place by being familiar and useful. Oh, here we go. The combat shotgun is by far and away the best weapon in Rage 2. Obtained in the game's second story mission, it's one of the best shotguns to ever exist in a video game. I'm being dead serious. Whatever video game shotgun you love using, Rage 2's shotgun is better. Unless it's the super shotgun, nothing will ever beat that thing. The combat shotgun is ridiculously strong, especially when upgraded, and its sense of impact is amazing. Ammo for it is literally everywhere. You will always be able to fall back on this weapon if shit gets real. It's also the most practical gun in the entire game due to it having 2 completely different fire modes. The main attack is your standard buckshot, which tears through enemies up close, and the alternate attack is a concussion slug that blows enemies back, giving you room to breathe. Thanks to these 2 different fire modes, the combat shotgun is useful at all ranges against any enemy type, and using it when overdrive is active is just ridiculous. This weapon is beautiful. This weapon is art. It's this game's version of the R201 carbine. So yeah, that's all of the guns found in Rage 2. Ranking these was a surprisingly difficult task due to all of them being a ton of fun to use. Realistically, the only weapons whose rankings are locked in are the combat shotgun and the Sidewinder pistol. The former is the undisputed best weapon, while the latter is easily the worst. The remaining weapons could probably be switched around a place or two, depending on my mood. Shooting guns, using superpowers, and skipping cutscenes aren't the only things you will be doing in this game. You also spend a lot of time behind the wheel. Now, I've clearly established in the past that I do not like cars, both in real life and in video games. Surprisingly though, the driving in Rage 2 does not make me want to blow my brains out. A ringing endorsement, right? Seriously though, I don't really mind driving around the wasteland in this game. To me, cruising from location to location feels like a temporary break from the action. You unlock your personal vehicle, Phoenix, upon completing the game's prologue, and it's what you'll be driving for most of your adventure. Phoenix handles better than any other vehicle you can find in the wasteland, and it's also the only one that can be upgraded. In addition to all of that, Phoenix has a built-in personality that speaks to you every once in a while, voiced by the legendary Linda Carter.
I'm Phoenix. I know I look good, but I drive better.
Phoenix is unironically my favorite character in the entire game. I really wish she had more dialogue. There are other vehicles besides Phoenix, but the game really wants you to stick with Phoenix for good reason. Basically, every other vehicle in Rage 2 handles like complete booty, and they all feel like they only exist to check a box. The biggest example of this is Icarus, which is a little gyrocopter that you can fly. When I unlocked this for the first time, I was hyped. The prospect of flying around an open world is infinitely more exciting to me than driving around one. Oh, but all of that hype faded as soon as I tried flying this piece of shit. Icarus is like a terrible version of Far Cry 4's Buzzer. This thing feels like it's fighting with you every time you try to fly it. You will get the hang of Icarus with enough practice, but good grief, this thing stinks. Bottom line, stick with Phoenix and your driving experience in Rage 2 will be perfectly fine. With that being said, I recommend giving the other vehicles a try, but abandon them as soon as you're fed up with them. The final boss of this game is very standard and ridiculously easy. I gotta say, when you have superpowers that recharge fast, 8 awesome guns with plenty of ammo for each, crazy movement abilities, a maxed out life bar, and like a million medkits, you feel invincible. Okay, we finished Rage 2. Does this come off as abrupt and extremely sudden? Good. That means my goal of imitating the game's ending worked. It all comes and goes extremely quickly. The ending itself is also pretty bad, just like the rest of the story. However, I actually think that Rage 2's ending is slightly less terrible than Rage 1's, but given how Rage 1 has one of the worst endings ever, that's a low bar. I love this game with every fiber of my being, but the story stinks really bad, and so does the ending. I mean, no disrespect to the people who wrote it, I will say that the writers did at the very least try to make something compelling. It just didn't land. Despite the final mission being anticlimactic, you are able to continue playing the game after the credits roll, which is great. Seriously, if you're making an open world game, let the player continue playing after they complete the main story. That shit should be legally required. Overall, Rage 2 is a game that's not only derivative, but unpolished, and it's also seriously lacking in the story department. However, I'm willing to forgive all of that because it's an absolutely exhilarating experience. Every time I launch this game, I know I'm going to enjoy myself. Rage 2 is a lot of fun, and at the end of the day, that's all a video game really needs to be. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next game review.